The concept of sufficiency is my inspiration behind this bush gourmet cuisine. It's a word that was first coined by an American inventor called Buckminster Fuller, but carried into the mainstream by a social activist and fundraiser called Lynn Twist in the United States. And she always said that there is enough and that we are enough. She worked as a fundraiser for the Hunger Project. So she's worked with the very, very richest in the world and the very, very poorest. And in trying to uplift people, she realized that it wasn't just about money. It was also about community. It was also about sharing and collaborating. And as she said, sufficiency doesn't mean we shouldn't strive or aspire. Sufficiency is an act of generating, distinguishing, making known to ourselves the power and presence of our existing resources and our inner resources. Sufficiency is a context we bring forth from within that reminds us that if we look around us and within ourselves, we will find what we need. That is what I have done here on the farm, is I have used what is available to me, whether it is in the bush, whether it is in a village, whether it is in a market, or from a local producer, or from my own organic garden. My name is Annabel Hughes Aston. I'm coming to you from Livingstone in Zambia. I live with my husband on a farm and came here 80 years ago from the United States, although I grew up in Kenya. I was born in Kenya, grew up in Zimbabwe, and then with my work as a journalist and as a pro-democracy activist, traveled the world until I came to Zambia 8 years ago. I trained as a chef when I was first left school, but didn't really embrace it cooking again until years later when I started my own garden in the United States and then started foraging. This was the beginning of my bush gourmet cuisine, as I call it. It's where I marry the fresh organic garden ingredients with wild ingredients from the bush and indigenous and traditional ingredients grown by the Zambians in their villages or sold at the markets. And I try only to create dishes and recipes around what is available to me here. What I'm doing today for the Good Food Festival is I'm making a wild pan fort. It's a wonderful pan fort in Italian is Italian strong bread, but it's a lovely, chewy, spicy, nutty cake or confection, really, which originated out of Siena in the 17th century, and it was. It says that what I've read is that the more ingredients you have in your pan fort, the more affluent you were, and so there's supposed to be around 17 ingredients, of which we have here, if not more. And it's a confection that I make entirely out of our local ingredients. I'm deeply influenced by Italian cuisine. I love how they use fresh ingredients from their garden. They use what's available around them, and I do the same. A wild pan fort is wonderful to serve as an after-dinner confection with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. I often serve it with a cold ice cream, or again made with all the local ingredients. Recently I made a bomb with a mongongo nut praline ice cream, encasing a Zambian coffee cream, and I served it with a wild pan fort. So to start with, you need to turn your oven on to 160 degrees. Unlike most baking, is that it doesn't have to be exact. There's one element to this cake that you should get right, otherwise it'll be too hard or too soft, and we'll get to that stage. But until then, I'm going to just start showing you what we will do. So we have a baking tin. It's not, all of this is the perfect, equipment. You can do it in any way you like. You can do it with a cake tin which comes out underneath. I've just got this in my kitchen, and so I use it. I'm using mongongo nut oil to grease the tin, because mongongo nut oil is incredible. It's incredibly healthy. We saw Ruth Mongongo, which is a wonderful name considering she's opening mongongo nuts. We saw her. She lives in a village just down from the farm. She works on our farm, but she lives in a village nearby, and she has been opening nuts all her life. She was taught by her mother, who was taught by her mother, and she will teach her daughter. It's a tradition that goes from mother to daughter to mother to daughter. The mongongo nut oil is not nearly as complicated to make because they pound them in a pestle and mortar, the nuts, and then they boil them, and then they extract the oil that way. So I have greased my pan, and now I'm just going to dust a little bit of cocoa along the sides of my tin. This also helps in getting the cake out afterwards at the end. So I'm just going to move it along like this. This doesn't rise very high, this cake, so you don't need to go to the top of your tin. You just need to make sure that the sides are covered so that it's nice and easy to remove from the tin. Okay, so that is our tin ready and waiting to go. I've turned on my oven, and now Martin showed us how we roast the nuts and what we do there. All my ingredients are prepared. The wheat, our own wheat. This is a very new development. We've just been in receipt of a stone ground mill, which is the greatest treat. And my husband Chris is a farmer, wheat, and one of the crops he grows is wheat, and it's now harvest time. And we have literally just started grinding our own wheat. So we'll be using that flour in this recipe today. So and it's one of the first baked goods we've made with our own flour. So we're going to just put the flour. We're just sieving the flour in here to just give it some air. As I said, this is our wheat flour, so it's not a delicate cake, this. It's not like it's not a light sponge, so to be able to use this beautiful home ground flour is an absolute treat for us. And then we're going to add the cocoa powder as well and sieve that just to make sure that it's nice and light and not stuck together. And then we're going to stir in all the fruits and nuts, all our beautiful things that we've got here, those are all the nuts, the mongongo nuts. The mongongo nut is a very soft, fatty nut, as I have already said. The hazelnut is very hard, so the combination of the two is great texture-wise in this lovely dish. We have our insumo fruit. We have our masawa, which is the insumo is a little bit like a plum. Our masawa, which is a little bit like an apricot, and you can use candied peel, you can use any dried fruit, cranberries, raisins, prunes, whatever you like. Obviously, I am wanting to do this with as many local ingredients as I can possibly manage. I have here too kumquats, which grow on our trees outside, and they are wonderful. Their skin is sweet, the inside is bitter, so we dehydrate these kumquats as a form of preserving. We preserve as much as we possibly can for the seasons when and the months when we don't have them on the trees. So I'm putting in these beautiful slices of kumquat, which give them this very good citrus peel taste. But again, you could use candied peel, you could use orange, ginger, whatever you like, candied ginger. And then this here is preserved lemon. I beg your pardon, preserved lime. Preserved lemon and lime is the most incredible way of of putting up your lemons and limes so you've got them through the year. Acid, lemons, and all acid is a flavor enhancer, and so is salt. This is a Middle Eastern way of preserving lemons and limes. And so you stuff them into the jar. Here's the jar. You put them into the jar packed with salt, and you let them sit. And then you, after a week or so, or 2 weeks, you just push them down with something that can push them, and all the juice comes out. And then you flavor it with some rosemary, chili, bay leaf. And I use this in sweet things because this is a pan fort, this is a cake. It's the most wonderful burst of flavor. Salt is also a flavor enhancer. So this combination is just a winner. It really is a fantastic thing. So I decided to add this to my pan fort, and it is one of the most wonderful additions when you bite into this lovely cake at the end, and you will see it is the most wonderful, wonderful citrusy but salty, so it's a flavor burst. We have a black pepper, ground black pepper, cardamom, coriander seeds. The coriander seeds we collect from our own garden and preserve them. They're dried. They dry outside in the sun on the plant. We bring them and we use them as our spices. So that is the cardamom, black pepper, and coriander seeds are going in. And then we use cinnamon, which we grind just from cinnamon sticks, which we buy from one of our local Indian suppliers. And these are pink peppercorns, which are grown by one of our friends in Livingston in her garden. She also happens to provide us with all our dairy. This is Mrs. Maureen Clutie. And again, a wonderful looking part to the cake, but also a little bite of heat, and it is such a wonderful addition. So this is the stage, the only stage in the pan fort that does require some care, because if you overcook the sugar, you can make the pan fort too hard, and if you undercook it, it can be too soft. It's a chewy confection. And once you've once you've done it a couple of times, it's very easy. I use Zambian wild honey, which is available all over this country. It's just magnificent. It is the most wonderful honey in the world. And then caster sugar. And I use now, I'm fortunate to have a candy thermometer, but I never had one for many years. And you want to get this to the soft ball stage of sugar, which is basically, it's 115 degrees Celsius if you do have a candy thermometer. But if you don't, then I suggest that what you do is you just have a little cold water nearby with some iced water. And it takes about 3 minutes, 3 minutes of cooking. It's very quick. But just put a tiny bit of that honey and sugar into cold water. And if it goes into a soft ball, it's ready. So it's like a thick honey, really. So just remember that. You'll be working that out. I mean, it doesn't take much, and I've done it for years without a candy thermometer, so don't worry about too much about it. But it does require, in order to get your sort of perfect pan fort, this is an important stage. So I put in my honey, and now I'm adding the caster sugar, and I'm putting it onto the stove over here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to melt the sugar, so I'm going to stir it occasionally, and then once it's melted, I'll just let it cook without. You just need to do this occasionally. You do not want to burn the sugar, and this is quite a strong stove, this. So I do lift it off the heat from time to time because it's quite, at its lowest heat, it's still quite strong, and we don't want to burn the sugar. So we're just letting this melt. Eventually it'll start boiling, and we're going to let it cook. And once it's melted, we're going to just let it boil, and then I'll put in my candy thermometer. And as I said, just have a little cold water nearby or in the fridge nearby, and drop it in, and it's just you want it to be the same, you want it to be at a soft ball caramel type. That's Well, that's what 115 degrees Celsius is. I'm going to use my candy thermometer to check where the temperature is. You take the honey and sugar off the heat, and as quickly as you can, you pour this into the dried ingredients. This is what will bind the dried ingredients together. It's what sticks it all together, as you will see at the end result. And it gives the most beautiful flavor, because Zambian honey is truly, truly the best honey I've ever tasted. There we go. So we're just going to mix it up now. And we're going to get all of these beautiful ingredients stuck together with that sugar. And you get it, and you can start to smell all the citrus. You start to smell all these beautiful things. And the reason why you've got to hurry to get the honey and sugar into these ingredients is because you really, it dries fast. It gets, and then it'll all stick, and you need to get this into your pan as quickly as possible. I do apologize for my mask, but we are filming this in COVID times, and we like to feel we want to be responsible in this kitchen and in our garden and on our farms. So I'm going to now transfer this ingredients into our pan. And then we're going to push it down. Okay, so now I'm just going to, my hands are clean. What I'm going to do is, you want it to be as flat as possible. So you need a little bit of elbow grease in this. And I just use my hands to flatten it. Okay, and there you have it. That is what the cake looks like before you put it in the oven. So now we're going to put it, I've turned on my oven already. We're going to put it in at 160 for 25 minutes about, but we will check it. And then you want to cook this pan fort until it's just firm. So, ovens vary. So ours, we've worked it out, is about 25 minutes. It can take 30. I've spent the last 7.5 years developing the garden and then experimenting with infusing wild animals, wild edibles, and indigenous Zambian ingredients with the produce I'm growing. My recipes are inspired by hot countries, because we live in extreme heat here for most of the year. So the Mediterranean, Southeast Asian, Middle Eastern, North African. But what we cook is entirely driven by what is the freshest in the garden, or available to me from the community or from the bush at any given day, on any given day. So it's all driven by the freshness of the ingredients. The fresh ingredients, not the dried, the fresh ingredients are taken from within a 30-kilometer radius of this farm. We are very lucky that we have fantastic dairy, that we have fantastic meat and fish, all available to us here in Livingston, and then I combine this with all the indigenous, traditional, and wild food. It's my sincere hope that by promoting these traditional, indigenous, and wild ingredients, that it will also uplift the impoverished who exist within all around us. There is a lot of impoverishment in this on the riverside along the Zambezi, and it's both my husband and I are committed to the upliftment of our communities, and we hope that this in some small way can make a difference to their own lives by creating these community projects, by supporting them in their gardens, by supporting them at the markets, and obviously by training and employing them. And it's time now to take out the pan fort. And here we have it. You want it to be very softly firm, so you just feel with your finger. Yep, that's good. And I'm just going to get my palette knife now. You don't want it sticking to the side. So what I do is I just run my palette knife and push it down to the edge of the pan. As I said, you can use whatever pan you like. This just helps. And just push it down so that it doesn't stick to the side. And then you're going to let it cool completely before you finish this off. Well, let it cool so that you can at least handle it. When you open up your pan, you don't want it to be pulling the cake apart. So there you have it. This is your pan fort. We're just going to let it cool completely now until such time as we are going to, as you can see, it's soft to the touch, packed to the gills with fruit. We will dust it with icing sugar, rub the icing sugar in, and then we will serve it with a delicious cappuccino. So the final stage now of this beautiful pan fort, wild pan fort, is to just dust it with icing sugar. It gives it a lovely sort of rustic look, which is very typical of the pan fort in Italy. So I'm fortunate, I have a little thing, but just if I were you, I would use a sieve if you don't have a little container like this. And I literally just dust it all over. And then I just push it in with my hands. You just want to rub it in so that it goes in between all the nuts. Oopsie, goes one of the nuts. And it just gives it that final sort of nice look. And there you have it. A wild pan fort, and now we're going to go and cut a piece and serve it. Here you have a piece of wild pan fort. Is also a very popular confection served at Christmas time or at holiday time, Thanksgiving in America or Easter, but we serve it throughout the year because it's such a favorite of so many people. And it's a healthy confection. You know, it's filled with nuts and wild fruits and fruits from the garden. Here we've served it with a cappuccino made by my dear husband Chris, who is a brilliant barista. And on top of the cappuccino, he has put a beautiful mongongo tree. So here we have the wild pan fort. Thank you for your time.